And the question for this week is, how do you deal with awkward daddies? Mine panics at the word vagina when our girls say it. And welcome back to Sitting in a Car. I'm Sarah Sproul and I sit in a car with you each week to answer a question to help you raise your confident and caring young person to respect themselves and the people around them. This is such a great question, and what it's going to allow us to do is talk about gender and how do we raise children that in the future, as adults, can feel like they can talk about anything at all. And that's going to help the generations to come to be more open talking about all this sort of stuff. I remember a story about a mum who was very far away on a very much anticipated trip to visit friends. And she was telling me the story, and one morning she got up and there was a message on her phone from her daughter, who was 12 at the time, saying, "Mum, please ring me, it's important." So she rang, and what did she discover? That 12-year-old had got her period the day before, and the mum wasn't there to help her out. So what did the 12-year-old do? She talked to her younger brother. They sorted it out and then spoke to their dad when he got home from work. We want our children to be surrounded by good, empathetic humans, right, that can help them get through things that are difficult and challenging. So the first thing to say about this idea of awkward daddies is that we need to respect people who have things that happened in their past that mean they feel awkward around particular topics. And for this dad, from this question, he may be one of those people that were raised in a family that men were not allowed to talk about women's business, and that periods and vaginas and vulvas and all the things were women's business, and that was none of his business. And the fact that he now feels awkward about it is not his fault, really. He's just a product of the way he was raised. Point 2. There are some jobs in our culture that are deemed women's work. Now, there's lots of problems with the idea of women's work, but talking about vulvas and body parts with children can be deemed women's work, which means that it's actually probably easier for women to do this part of parenting than men. Now, a really good friend of mine, Dr. Jemima Bailey, who has all things to do with gender and awesomeness, talks about this idea of sometimes mothers need to step back and create space to allow a father to step up and do a particular part of his parenting. And it may be that there are assumptions that we make to do with our parenting that can be questions. So maybe the assumption that one of the parents in your duo, if there are two parents doing your parenting, is that it's really, if you have a vagina, then you're allowed to talk about a vagina. But if you don't have a vagina, then maybe you shouldn't talk about it. And so we need to question these things. We need to step back and create space. I have 2 trees in my backyard that have been growing very close together. Now, there is a point to this story, so bear with me. 2 trees that have grown very closely together. One very, very large tree, and I can't remember what it was called, and the silver birch. Now, the big tree had to be cut down, and what was really interesting was the silver birch had grown in a shape that meant that where the big tree was, the silver birch didn't grow into it. So now the silver birch looks like this sort of a half moon shape of a tree instead of that sort of more circular or oval shape that trees grow into if they've got the space to grow. And the parallel is that sometimes if there is a very strong parent who feels stronger about one particular part of parenting, then the other parent will feel less able to grow into that space or grow into that ability. And we need to just be aware of that. Point 3. There are lots of stories in our culture. I live in Ireland, but maybe in your culture too, where the newspaper is reporting on child sexual abuse that is done or perpetrated by a man. Now, there aren't a lot of stories of child sexual abuse being committed by a woman. They do exist, but they're very rare. And so what happens for people who are male or identify as male and they read these stories, they can sort of feel like they're dangerous in some way and that they shouldn't be talking about things to do with vaginas and vulvas and sex and all those things with their children because they're conditioned that men who do that are weird and maybe broken and probably a little bit sick. So when we're thinking about awkward daddies, sometimes those men need help, support and care to step up into a part of parenting that they haven't been prepared to do. And sometimes That might mean the first step of caring and support might mean actually asking them if they would like some help to do this part of their parenting. For some dads and some men who are parents, male people who are parents, talking about vaginas, vulvas, periods, all those things that they're not used to can feel too hard. But with a little bit of support from caring people around them who just want to help them do the best parenting they can, these parents might be able to find a way that they can stretch just a little bit further into something that's just a little bit uncomfortable. Now, we don't want to get them stressed out, but maybe they want to stretch themselves and do a little bit of parenting slightly different and slightly better. So let's recap the 3 points for today. When we're answering the question, how do you deal with awkward daddies? Mine panics at the word vagina when our girls say it. Here are the 3 points we've covered. First one, our past impacts what we can do in the present, and that's not our fault. Second point, sometimes the co-parent needs to make space for a dad or a male-identified parent to be able to grow into a new skill. And the third point is, how can we support our dads or our male parents to do something different with kindness and compassion? And that's sitting in a car for another week, where I've answered a question to help you raise your confident and caring young person to respect themselves and the people around them. And while I've got you here, can I ask for your help? Would you head over to iTunes and write a review of Sitting in a Car? This helps parents just like you find the information and support they need to do this part of their parenting even better. Thanks for that, and bye for now.